Good morning, students. Today, math lesson 120, the last lesson of our entire book. And guess what? This one is on multiplying mixed numbers. This one's pretty fun, actually. So, we only have one page of a lesson. I kept turning to the next page. It didn't exist. So, we need to focus on this. When we multiply mixed numbers, we change the mixed numbers to improper fractions before multiplying. That way, it makes it much easier. So I'm going to take 2.5, and I'm going to multiply the 2 times the 2 to get 4, add the 1, and I have 5 halves. Over here, my 1 2/3, I will multiply the 3 times 1, I'll add the 2, and I will get 5/3. Then I just go through the regular steps of multiplication. 5 times 5 is 25. 2 times 3 is 6. Then I have 25/6, and I need to simplify. 6 goes into 25 4 times. I have 1 left over because 6 times 4 is 24. And I have 4 and 1/6. All right, so it says right here, what are the steps for multiplying fractions? Well, we all know how to multiply a fraction, right? So our steps are multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators, and then reduce the product if necessary, right? So here we go. For example, number 1, we have 1/5 times 4.5. So I need to change this mixed number into an improper fraction. I do 4 times 2 is 8, and I add the 1. And so I have 9 halves, correct? All right, so then I will multiply my 1/5 times my 9 halves. So 1 times 9 is 9, and 5 times 2 is 10, and I have 9/10. I don't need to reduce or simplify that problem, right? So the question asks, can we use 9/10 divided by 9 halves to check our answer? Why or why not? And the answer is yes. Multiplication by 9 halves and division by 9 halves are inverse operations, so we would be able to use them. All right, our next example, our last example, we are looking at 3, a whole number 3 times 2 1/3. So I would take and I would multiply my 3 times 2, and I would get 6, and then I'd add the 1, and I would have 7/3. So then I would multiply my 3, I'd put my 3 over 1 like I like to do when we're multiplying whole numbers times a fraction. So 3 over 1, 3 times 7 is 21, 1 times 3 is 3. Then guess what? I simplify, 3 goes into 21 7 times, and voila, there is your answer. We simplified the result to find what the product is 7. All right? So you can check your work by 3 1/3 plus 3 1/3. I'm saying 3 1/3. I mean 2 1/3 plus 2 1/3 plus 2 1/3 equals 6 3/3, which is 7. All right, our homework or our lesson practice today. I wrote it on paper like I usually do. All right, so we have, for our first one on A, we have 1.5 times 1 3/4. First thing I do, I multiply these two and I add that one. Remember, because I have a whole, which would be 2 halves, right? So I multiply 2 times 1, and that is 2 plus 1 is 3. So I have 3 halves. And if I did the problem and found my mixed number, it would equal that exact same thing, right? So here we go again. I'm going to multiply the 4 times 1, and I'm going to add the 3. So 4 times 1 is 4, plus 3 is 7. 7/4. All right, so when I'm looking at this problem, I want you to be able to think that you have 1 whole. That means 4/4, right? 1 whole would be 4/4 plus 3, and that's 7, okay? Now, let's do the multiplication. 3 times 7 is 21. 2 times 4 is 8. And guess what? I need to reduce. So 8 goes into 21. 2 times, and how many do I have left over? I have 5 left over, right? Because 8 times 2 is 16. 21 subtract 16 would be 5. So I have 2 5/8. All right, next one. I think these are actually pretty fun. So I need to change this into an improper fraction. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. I have 7 halves, which makes sense. If I had 3 whole circles all broken half, I would have 6 of them plus the 1, right? All right, then this one. 1 times 3 plus 2. 1 times 3 is 3, plus 2 is 5. And there we go, 5/3. Multiply, 7 times 5 is 35. 2 times 3 is 6. How many times does 6 go into 35? Let's say 5 times with 5 left over. And 6, because 5 times 6 is 30. And then you would have your 5 left over. All right, here we have a whole number. So I'm going to put my 3 over 1. Then I need to change this mixed number into an improper fraction. 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. 5 halves. 3 times 5 is 15. Then 2 times 1 is 2. And we need to reduce. 2 goes into 15 7 times with 1 left over. So this should be 7 1/2. All right, next we have another whole number. 4 over 1 times, now I need to make this into an improper fraction. So 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 is 11. 11 over 3, I have 44 over 3. Now guess what? How many times would 3 go into 44? All right, I'm going to do the math on that, right? Even though I can know that it goes in there. Okay, 3 goes into 44 once. 3, subtract 1, bring it down. How many times does 3 go into 14? 4 times, you get 12. Subtract, so I have 14 2/3 as my answer for this one. 14 2/3. All right. Our next problem has 1/3, a regular fraction, times a mixed number. All right, 2 times 3 is 6, plus 1 is 7. And there we go. 7 times 1 is 7. 3 times 3 is 9. Our answer is 7/9. And our last lesson practice problem for the whole entire year. All right, 2 times 6 is 12. 12 plus 5 is 17. All right, so 1 times 17 is 17. 6 times 6 is 36. Now this is a prime number. Only 1 and 17 go into this, and 17 doesn't go into 36, so we are as low as we can go. All right, good luck on your written practice, and we'll see you at 10.